just started on the 3 books because the last time we did it, I had the trilogy. So I'm actually really excited to go through it again without any of my previous underlines. So it would be interesting to see like how I experience it. We're essentially going to be like a year later, right, that we're doing this again. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Right on.
I'll go next. Christine, I think you stole most of what I wanted to say.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm glad to redo this. I think Vanessa and I, we talked about it about a month ago, right? I said, when are we gonna do this? And I said, let's start in November, and here we are. I'm reading it from the small book as well. I was reading it from an ebook version and highlighting from there, but I think it'd be good to go through it this way. And at least when we're referring to it, at least I'll know exactly what page we're on.
That's right.
And I'm also listening to the audiobook version as I'm driving to and from my work there. And so it's good to listen to it while I'm driving instead of listening to music. I'm actually hearing talk. So, and I think it'd be good to get it, to understand it from a higher level now since we've gone through it the first time. Just so that I think we're at a higher level of consciousness or awareness, and so that as we reread it, I'll pick up on certain things that I could not comprehend from the past. Mm-hmm. So I think that'll be good.
So Vanessa, are we 4 the only ones that are actually on today?
Yeah, today. Yeah, we're the only ones that could make it today.
Okay, I just didn't see but four little boxes. I want to make sure. All right, I'll go next. I have a hardback book in front of me, and it's the complete trilogy. And I'm really going to use that when we do phone calls so that I can kind of determine maybe where things are. But I'm an audiobook person, and I will never read this book. I've read this book 3 times before it was ever published, and I will never read it in hard print ever again. I will do audio. I've not even finished the audios before, but I've started it. So I've read this part in audio before, but I'm going to read it all again as we go through the book. And it's good. It'll be good because every time you read this, you're different. And I really read this years ago. So I'm sure I'm going to have an interesting journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. Love having you on the journey with me. Exciting. Yeah, exactly as you said, Pam. It's. I feel like now I'm a different person from the first time I read it, and it's blowing me away. Even the first little bit, the preface and the foreword, I'm like, wow, it's such profound material, and it really grounds me, and it opens up my mind as well to see the big picture, and remind me of that big picture of what this is all about, why I'm here. So I'm super excited to do this again. I'm really thankful that we are doing it again. We're making it happen. I know we talked about it at the end when the last book club was coming to an end. Yeah, we'll do it again. We'll do it again. But as I was saying that, I'm like, I don't know. It's a big commitment, like every week and reading the book. But now that we're doing it, I'm like, yeah, I can't wait. I'm so glad. And as we said before, we keep each other accountable. Because if I wasn't in a group like this, I would never do it on my own. But because I know I'm going to be with you guys, I gotta read it. When I read it, when I sit down, I make that time. It changes me, and it's so good for me. And I know that this is something I need in my life. So I'm thankful to have you guys, to have us all. Yeah. So let's do it. What we do is we just kind of go into the book, and then we go page by page, see what stood out for all of us, and then we discuss it. So did anybody have anything from the first page of the preface?
I did. On the second, so kind of like what you were talking about, Vanessa, it's like, you know, I'm not really, I don't naturally connect with the science part of it, but the philosophy part, I feel like I'm really attracted to that. And it's interesting how you can see that, like, even on this first page, the material connecting to your real life, your life. So it's the second sentence, it starts with the second sentence of the second paragraph. We of Western culture are an impatient, goal-oriented people driven towards endpoints. Skip a little forward. Such misappropriation of emphasis often squanders our opportunities because more often than not, the tastiest and most nourishing part of life lies in experiencing the process, not in attaining the goal.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like, I was like, oh, that really applies to my own life right now. So, and it kind of it sort of sets the tone of the book, because we all know that the book is challenging, right? And it's hard. And I think like at some points you're like, I just got to get to the end of, I got to get my homework done. I got to get this finished, right? But if you sort of slow down and take your time, that's where the real material is, and you can appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny because I had that part highlighted as well. And yeah, that's how I live my life, is I'm rushing from one thing to the next, and I'm never actually just enjoying and being here, mindful of the present moment. And that's one of the things that I do like about the book, and that it is challenging, is that I really need to focus. Like, you can't go on autopilot and read it. You actually have to be completely present with it and connect with the material. So if anything, the book really helps to slow me down and bring me into that present moment awareness.
Yeah, I had that section highlighted as well. and the last sentence is the tastiest and most nourishing part of the life is experiencing the process. And I've like mostly like what you said, I've slowed down the process. And then when I look at other people and how their life is sort of running in chaos, like thousands of miles per second, I'm just looking at them kind of smiling, because you know what, slow down. just learn to experience what's going through and use those as lessons in your life. And I've been doing that, and it's kind of interesting how when you step back and you look at other people and how chaotic their lives are, whereas I've been there, sort of done that, and now I'm living life at a higher level where I'm understanding what's going on. It's really cool.
Yeah. So funny, because we often, Pamela will often try to make this applicable to our own life situations. And so oftentimes with me, I see that, so I just started dating this guy, right? We talk about this a lot. My love life comes up a lot.
You bring that up a lot.
Good for you, Vanessa.
But anyway, I was dating, it didn't work out. But when we were dating, he's an island boy. He lives over on the island. And we spent the weekend together. And after the weekend, I called him up because we were going to do a sweat lodge together. And I called him up and I'm like, oh my God, I found the sweat lodge. Yeah, I'm so excited to do it. We're going to do it this day. And I was like going a million miles a minute. And he was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. He's like, slow down. He's like, I can't even keep up with you, man. And basically it didn't work out because I'm on, like, I'm so fast. I go, go, go. And he's like just way far removed from society. And it's out of balance. So it made me look at myself and be like, am I just running too fast through life? Do I need to slow down and just take a minute to really smell the roses and enjoy things, right? So yeah, it was interesting. It gave me a new realization. I'm still kind of looking at it though and being like, but that's just me. That's how I am. Yeah, maybe that's my ego trying to justify my lifestyle. But
well, for the relationship part, maybe it is just you the way you are. But I think you're taking the time to stop back and stop and look at yourself is a real good idea. I think it's again, like you said, he was from an island and they live a different lifestyle. And we in Western culture are on this treadmill where it's always a goal to get to the end. And I am as guilty as anybody. I have been goal-oriented, ambition-driven, and now that I'm retired, I'm looking at my life saying, okay, you did all that, and I loved it. It was great. I don't want to do it anymore. And now I want to be the authentic me, and I'm really kind of having a hard time with that. Like, well, I got to go off and do all these busy things. No. And it really is. If you can stop and do it in your life while you're enjoying your life instead of, which I did some, obviously. I've grown over the last so many years. It's not like I've just been totally stagnant, but if you can really, really be it when you're experiencing those things, you'll get so much more out of it. It's the journey, not the destination.
Right.
And I have to remind myself daily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. All about the journey. So on this journey, do you guys have anything else from the first page? If not, we'll go on to the second. On the next page, second paragraph, I had that part highlighted where he says, I strongly suggest that you adopt an attitude of patience toward gaining an understanding of the profound mysteries and ancient secrets that are logically unraveled by this new physics. I actually had those whole 2 paragraphs highlighted. But just to fast forward, the very last line of the second paragraph there, he says, familiar paradigms, like a favorite teddy bear, can be extremely difficult to let go. And I really like that because it's true. Paradigms, beliefs, they make us feel safe, right? They make us feel like we know what's going on. And it can be hard to let go of that and open ourselves up to something completely different and foreign. But as he said, to just have an attitude of patience is something that I really want to cultivate, to be patient with this material and not rush through it and be open to discovering something new.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like that part.
Yeah, I actually love the line right after where you about the teddy bear. Every successful journey, regardless of how long or difficult, begins with a single step that is animated by gumption, directed by goals, and repeated as often as necessary by dogged perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
So nicely stated.
The next page over at the top, he says, worldviews are not casually picked like fruit from Dungeon cart. To make the necessary connections, we must dive deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we have to be so present with this material, is because it's not surface, it's not superficial, it's really deep, and we have to open ourselves up and really connect at that being level with it, right? Not a casual thing.
I actually had underlined the next 2 lines right after that. So far beneath the foundation of your intellect, your culture lays out the template for your worldview upon the core belief systems that define your perception of existence. The basic assumptions that support your notion of reality are not seen by you as assumptions at all. They're accepted without question as the most solid of all facts. I thought that was so interesting because it's like that's true in that it's like you almost can't see your own beliefs for the most part because you assume they're basic assumptions, right? And when I read that, I'm like, oh, I would love to know, like, what culturally do I believe that I can't even see, right?
Is it because as we're growing up, it's already become a part of us?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it is the culture, and also we're very, very much influenced by our parents.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say it from a male perspective, but I'm working on something now in my own personal growth that has to do with, it's very hard not to become your mother when you're a female, because even though you say, I will not be like that, you find yourself doing the exact same things that your mother did.
Right.
Well, it's just amazing. Even though your intellect says, I will never be like that, you catch yourself and you're like, what?
Right.
There are things that my mother said to me when I was a child, and to this date, I still, I guess my core beliefs is still tying it back or connecting back to that time. And it's amazing how strongly those are influencing my behaviors right now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a female.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's your mother, the one that really is your nurturing one. So even for you as a male, the mother is still having a powerful influence, which is good in a lot of ways. I mean, there's some good influences there.
Yeah. There's good and bad.
Yeah. Always, because we're all that way, right? She was learning when she was raising you, okay?
Right.
She was only as evolved as however she was, and that's not a bad thing.
Right. And what I've realized is that she only knew how to raised me as a child at that time. It may be, to her it was good, but maybe it wasn't good overall.
Right. And if she were doing it now, it would be a different experience.
Exactly, because she's grown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the belief system or the philosophy that we subscribe to in our is that of believe so strongly. And that's our truth. And even though, like, us, we're aware at the intellectual level that it's not a material, it's not a reality, that it is just an information-based system. We get that, logically makes sense. But I mean, I still see you guys as separate human beings, and I don't communicate with you. It doesn't seem like I communicate with you mind to mind, and I don't have that ability right now, or I haven't exercised it enough to be able to go remote view what's going on over there. So even though these things are so readily available to us, because my belief system is so firmly in place that I'm separate from you, I can't do these things yet. And I want to so bad, but it's my belief system. It's there, and I'm working on letting that go. I think that's my journey in this lifetime, is to let that go and return to my true nature as consciousness, as it works.
Mm-hmm.
But I think having that realization, though, that of what is my true nature, that will help me to get there. Because if I don't even know, then I'm just going to fumble my way through life. But at least now I know. Now I have a direction that I'm headed in.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else from that page?
Mm-mm.
Okay. The next page over.
Because that's where he talks about just what we were talking about yesterday, beneath the foundation of your intellect, your worldview, the influence it has on your core belief system, and realizing that, like you say, and actually starting to question all the things that you know. Well, do you really know it, or do you believe it because of the culture that you've been involved in?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
So that, Pamela, brings up a point that I feel like we talked about a lot in our last go round, was the difference about belief, right? A lot of conversations about what belief really was, right? So do you feel like the kind of the opposite of belief is knowing? And how do you achieve knowing? Is that only via experience?
I think, now this is me, I am not a celebrity or the guru here, okay? I think by experience, yes, that's how you achieve the knowing. Mm-hmm. And also, to know whether it's belief or knowing is very difficult, because the things that you think you know from your childhood may be a belief system. So I think that's where you need what Tom always calls your open-minded skepticism. As you become more aware, you start looking back at things and questioning them. Here's a perfect example, and I did it growing up. Raising children is one of the most growing things you can do. And of course, I wanted to be super mom, of course. Everything had to be perfect, which of course is wrong too. Yeah, it's wrong. You can't do it that way. But anyway, so I raised this son who was very intellectual, and I thought he was his IQ must have been, an order of magnitude higher than mine, and I really shouldn't have been raising him. But he'd always ask me these questions, and he asked, well, why can't you get in the water with when it's lightning and thundering? Well, somehow what I picked up from my environment, and I don't know if somebody told me it or if I just got it, I don't know where I got it from, but I always thought that water attracted lightning. It doesn't attract lightning. And I'm a physicist. So I'm a physicist now. My bachelor's degree is in physics. And I'm raising this child, and he's asking me this question. I'm going, I can't answer it. That's not, first of all, I started to say that, and then I'm going, that doesn't make sense. That's not right. I can't tell this to my child. And then I have to go back and think, what is it? Well, water conducts the electricity, so no matter where it hits, wherever you are, you can be exposed. But it's just, again, it's one of those things that you believe that you knew, because somehow it became part of your reality.
Right.
And as you become more aware, you can start to question, where did I get that? Is that really true? And today, of course, you can Google everything and find out whether or not it's true. So
Google has the answer for everything, right?
yes. Oh, I depend on Google.
Me too. Right on. Yeah, over on the next page, I'm in the big book, the 3 one. So I don't, it's 22 for me. I don't know what it is for you guys. But it's just 25 for you guys?
Yep.
Okay. I had the very top highlighted there. So where he says, although the language of American English is decidedly poor in non-physical conceptual descriptors, it does have the advantage of being unusually rich in communication and information technology descriptors. The latter, oddly enough, is what allowed me to convey the former. As strange as it may seem, it is the pervasiveness of modern science and technology, especially communication and data processing technology, that provides the conceptual tools required to produce a model of the larger reality, the Western mind, or more broadly, the Western attitude, or more accurately, the Western belief system, can relate to, understand, and work with. So that's a bit of a mouthful, but basically what he's saying is that for the first, well, what I understand him to be saying, my interpretation is that for the first time, we have a model that the Western mind can actually relate to and comprehend. And that's really exciting to me, because I don't think we've ever had anything like that before. It's always been in the margins. It's always been religion and spirituality, philosophy. It's never been something where the scientific minds can comprehend. So that
I think that's very powerful and exciting, because now maybe we can have in the Western world the scientific and the religions come together.
Mm-hmm.
You see, even if you were a scientist before and you believed in evolutionism, you believed in the Big Bang or whatever, you went to church on Sundays and for your spirituality, and you're believing God created the world in 7 days. You know, there have been these major conflicts. And now maybe there's a chance to pull it all together and recognize that some are metaphors and they're really not at odds with each other like they seem.
Exactly. Yeah. It's finally an opportunity for us to all unite and then come together and see that we're all saying the same thing from different angles, different ways.
Right. We're not disagreeing. We're just saying things differently.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Can you have a scientist who's religious?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just thinking
there are plenty of scientists. Yeah, and but it's a dichotomy. They go to church and they're religious, and I don't know. Hopefully, they're spiritual and not just into the dogma. They're gaining some spiritual growth there. They're getting in touch with their spiritual self, and yet it doesn't fit, and they can't talk about it. Matter of fact, there are scientists who've written that they can't, the spiritual part and the science part, they can't connect them.
Mm-hmm. Is it they can't connect them, or is it because the Western culture, or they're afraid of the Western culture might say something bad about them?
Yes, it's definitely both, but the latter, particularly in a scientific academic world, even if you are spiritual, religious and spiritual, you would not address it in that environment. You'd lose credibility.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point.
And that, I mean, for a lot of people, I feel like we don't turn to religion because it's so hard to just believe. And how do I just believe in one religion when there's so many religions that are saying that theirs is right, theirs is true? So what's nice about this is that it finally comes and it makes logical sense, so that you don't have to just believe. You can logically deduct the truth. That's right. What really me is I'm like, oh yeah, like all the pieces came together, and I'm like, oh, it makes sense now. So rather than me just believing, I could intellectually say, yeah, it makes sense to me, and everything that I feel to be true now matches my intellect and my logic, and it comes together. So I see it coming together even within myself, and I like that we can actually reflect this in our external world with with the religious people and the scientific people. They can come together. Yeah.
That's one of the things I like most about this book and about what Tom talks about, is because he says, don't believe this, right? It's like the very opposite. It said, no, don't. You need to figure this out on your own, which is like so different than almost everything else that's out there.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, because what you often hear is just believe, just believe. But he's like, Tom's like, if it makes you feel any better, I don't believe any of this either.
Yeah. And I love Tom's phrase, you got to taste the pudding, right? You got to go explore and develop your own perception of everything.
Yeah. Okay. Taste the pudding. So a little bit further down on that page, the second to last paragraph, where he talks about I'm a scientist. He also says that in their preconceived notions will be more of a hindrance than a help. So I like that because, yeah, definitely when you're reading this material, but even when we're just meeting people or looking at new information, if we have a preconceived notion and we're already judging them, we're not even able to open ourselves up and connect to who they really are. So that was a really good reminder for me to let go of any preconceived notion from just people in my daily life.
Right. I wonder if that, like, art, because I feel like if you are sort of self-reflective at all, you really realize that you're constantly judging people and situations and everything, right? And I wonder if those judgments are a way to understand our beliefs, right? Things that we sort of make assumptions about situations or people or whatever. Because a couple pages ago, I'm like, I didn't grow up religious, and I'm in my culture, so it's hard for me to like make observations about my own beliefs. But I do think that like we're almost always judging. I feel like I am, and then when you're aware of it, you're like, oh gosh, you have to be a little less judgmental about other people.
Yeah, and that's great awareness that you have, that you're noticing that you're judging and then telling yourself, oh, I don't want to do that anymore.
I feel like one of the big things, my big takeaways from our last go round was a conversation about, or something in the material where Tom said that anything that makes you feel a negative emotion, if it's frustration or impatience, that's ego, right? So that's something I feel like I carry with me now. And it helps me understand life a little bit better, because I can always identify negative emotions, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that's a shortcut to seeing the ego, because the only reason that we judge other people is to make ourselves feel better. So that's like, oh, look at what they're doing. Really, the ego's saying, I'm not doing that because I'm amazing.
Right.
Yeah, the ego is that.
Right.
That by putting other people down.
Right. Well, ever since the last go around, I've been, as a coach, I've been asking or listening, or when I'm asking or meeting people for the first time, I'm trying not to have perceived notions of them, and by doing that, they seem to be opening up more to me because I'm asking more authentic questions. And it's more about them versus what I'm thinking about them. I think because I've been able to do that, it builds a trust between me and the prospective client. Right. And I've noticed that I'm getting more clients that way as well, because it seems like I have I'm more caring for them versus the other way around. So I think it's a neat realization of that from that.
Totally, yeah. And because you're making it about them, you're making it about other. You're not making it about you and your judgment.
Exactly.
Right there, you're loving them. Yeah. And that feels good to be loved. And people and they appreciate that feeling.
Yeah, because people love talking about themselves, right?
They sure do. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going here. Just further down, he says patience will be required. Again, patience. And I highlighted every time he says patience because I need so much more patience in my life. Anything over on the next page?
Actually, the second sentence of the second paragraph, you'll be pushed to think a few big thoughts and ponder a few big ideas. but the conclusions you eventually come away with will be entirely yours, not mine. These are not books that set out to convince you of anything or persuade you towards a particular point of view. At every turn, you are strongly dissuaded from becoming a believer.
Yeah, I had that underlined too.
Yeah.
Same here.
And that's what kind of, you know, like when you do read it, like I said, I don't remember any of the science or have any real interest in it, but what I did take away from it is how does this help me in my real life, in my daily life, and growing as a person.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I had the next paragraph highlighted. Reading the My Big Toe trilogy is not likely to be a passive experience. It is, if you decide to seize the opportunity to climb out of your box, you will likely end up doing some difficult work. You will always be encouraged to think for yourself and come to conclusions that are based on your personal experience. So there's that taste of pudding thing again, right?
Yeah. And I really like that too, because I mean, for me, I can't stand when people tell me what to do or tell me what I should think. So to hear something like this is refreshing. It's like, no, it's up to you. You need to think for yourself. And it's interesting because I always encourage my kids to think for themselves, but sometimes they're like, just tell me, mommy, just tell me. And maybe that's just being lazy, right? They don't want to think for themselves because it's easier to just kind of surrender to what everybody else is doing.
Sure.
It's much easier. That's why a lot of people I have found when I do the work with Tom, they would like him to give them a prescription. Do this, do this, do that, and you will reach, you know, enlightenment or something, and drop your fears or whatever. And he couldn't do that. He can't do that. It wouldn't be the right thing to do. That's why he now has given tools to people to try and say, okay, use these tools as long as you need them, and then don't use those. But you have to do it yourself. And I'll be the first one. I know I'm growing too, just like everybody, and I struggle with my lessons. And sometimes just for fun, I'll say, well, Tom, why don't you just do it for me? Because no, he can't do it for me. Nobody can do this but yourself. And I really wouldn't want him. I'd get mad at him if he did do it for me. I really like to do things myself. It's just sometimes you just feel like it's just too hard, but you have to do it yourself. You have to experience it.
That's why we're here, right? We're here to have those experiences.
Right.
I even notice with sort, like if I'm in a meditative state and I connect to LCS and I'm like, tell me what to do, tell me what to do. Oftentimes LCS is like, you need to make the choice. It's like you've come here to make choices, not for me to make your choices. You need to do it. That's how you grow.
If I ask the LCS to tell me anything, it's totally silent.
It's like crickets. Yeah.
Crickets.
I'm the same. Yeah. But then it's like, well, thank you, because LCS trusts us to make our own decisions, right?
Right. That's what we're here for. And we wouldn't be here if we didn't have the potential to do it.
Right.
So and it's okay if we don't, if we mess up and have to come back and do it again, you know, and plenty of us do that over and over again. But the point is that this is our opportunity to do it. And maybe we can do it. Maybe we will do it, but we have the potential.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if we make a choice and it doesn't turn out to be in our favor, at least we made a choice, and now we can learn from it, right?
Exactly. Which means you still grow. You still grow. Exactly. It's not even the choices you make so much as the process in making them and the growth that you get out of them. Whether they were right or wrong doesn't matter so much.
Exactly.
If you get the same growth from doing it wrong as you did from doing it right, you don't have to repeat it.
Right.
I think in this society, a lot of people have difficulties making that choice, and so they don't do anything.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important to learn how to trust ourselves that what we are doing is the best thing for us and the people that surround us. So just trust that, no matter what it looks like, what the results are, but just trusting that we have that potential that we can evolve into.
I told Tom this morning, it's like I've got, you know, it's my split personality I've got going on. My intellect doesn't trust my authentic being or my intuition. My intellect constantly has to kick in and make sure it's done right or fix it or whatever, instead of just sitting back and going with the flow.
Mm.
That's the hard time I'm having. It's not even everybody else is going to look at you saying you did it wrong. It's my own intellect that wants to jump in and get it done right. And I've always had that tendency to do that, even for other people. It was really hard with raising children. Like you say, encouraging them to think and get there on their own. You can't do it for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I always wanted to fix everything for them. And I don't really have to fix anything. You just let go.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm.
What do we have next? Does anybody, what are we on, page 26, 20 on your book?
We're still on 25, but we're about to go to 26. I just had one line. I guess it's the third paragraph, last sentence. Maybe we already covered this. It says, on the other hand, significant growth is rarely easy, and if it is easy, it is rarely significant.
Yeah.
Very true, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if things are going well and everything is all hunky-dory, you don't need to change. You don't really need to, the learning doesn't come in there. But when things become really challenging and you're pushed to your limit, that's when you can grow. That's when true growth comes into play. Because then you have to reevaluate your life and your choices and your decisions. That's why often when we hit rock bottom, that's where a lot of our best learning comes in, is when we and we're like, something's got to change here.
Yeah. When things are going well, I'm just thinking out loud now, shouldn't you sort of look at life and say, okay, well, what if it wasn't going as well? Like, what am I missing here?
What do you mean? Say it again.
Well, if things are going so well, are you really learning as much as you could? Whereas you said that if it's something where you're hitting rock bottom, that's where you learn the most.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, I've also heard Tom say, though, as you grow up, you don't need those really hard lessons anymore, that you can learn, that your learning is different, that you don't have to go through such big challenges.
Yeah, and it seems to me like if you were at like a level where, like, he also wants you to, the book wants you to enjoy the process, right? That we were just talking about. So I guess if you can sort of let go of some of that ego where you're concerned about if you're doing things right, or if you're at the right place in your life, or if things are right or wrong, you'd be a lot happier, right, in your experiences and able to enjoy your life.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, because he often says the right question is not, is this right or is it wrong? It's, is this helpful? Is it useful? Is it helpful?
Right.
So the next page over, just at the top there, there's a slow and careful reading will optimize your investment. Take your time and meander through these books at a relaxed and unhurried pace. So that's a good way, a good disclaimer for this whole book is to take our time with it, not rush through.
Slow down.
Slow down, yep. Anything else from this chapter?
Mm-mm.
Okay,
Nope.
I'm gonna go here. Oh, there was one, I had one last part underlined from here. He says about slowing down, he says, it would be unfortunate for you to miss seeing a part of the forest that may be important to you because you became lost, exhausted, or discouraged, wandering unproductively among the trees in another part. So I really like that, because he's for me, I think he's talking about don't get lost in the details. So often we get lost in the details. And what that is our ego keeping us stuck there, so we don't actually have to take the time to do the real work and let go of fear and become love. So yeah, not to get too caught up in all the details of it. He says that to me too a lot. He's always like, Nessa, the big picture, the big picture. Because when I'm asking him all these little questions, he's like, focus on the big picture. Yeah.
So, Vanessa, have you ever had a coach like Daniel?
Just Tom.
You ought to consider Daniel as a coach for a while. You know, a coach can make a huge difference. I'm actually a certified coach as well, but I had coaches, and that's what made me become a coach, because I just thought, matter of fact, you might like being a coach someday too, because it's a lot of fun. But because you're helping people get to who they are, their authentic self, you're not making decisions, giving them advice. You're having them do it. And Daniel can do that as well as Tom, because all Daniel has to do is when you say something, he just asks you a question and encourages you to get to it. And remember, we're talking all through this about how you have to do it yourself. Nobody can do it for you, but a coach can help you.
Mm-hmm. I have a coach as well, and they ask me questions that I think I know, but they ask it to me in a deeper level, and it makes me think. And it's that
That's what they're for.
Great awareness of who I am and what I'm doing.
I think everybody should have their own coach, because you know what? We're so busy in today's life, just like taking the time to read this book and talk about it. We're so busy, like you say, with our hurry up and get there. We don't take the time for ourselves, and things get buried. And if you have a coach, a lot of things will come out that you maybe had buried that really you needed to address and think about, make you aware of. It's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like I'm surrounded. My friends are really good at that. So you met Renette. Remember we had dinner with?
Yes.
Yeah, I meet her once a week, and she's very good at just asking me questions that help me to reflect on what I'm doing, and then I always come to these big realizations. So
that's good. That's good. I didn't have friends like that. If you have close, that's why it's nice to have a community and a support group, because then they can you can serve as a coach for them, and they can serve as a coach for you, and it's a very good thing.
Exactly. Yeah. We have a pretty incredible community over here. Daniel?
Yes, we have a great community.
We're surrounded by facilitators and just people who are, good at compassionate inquiry and holding space. And so
yes.
I think more people need that in our fast-paced society. I don't think everybody has that. But you can do it with a network of friends and people, or you can do it with a coach, but everybody needs it because it forces you to stop and slow down, think, because the coach's job is to challenge you to think, become aware.
Yeah. Right.
I love that.
Yes. So the last part I had highlighted from this verse, from the preface, was he says here, again with the seeing the big picture, he says, be careful not to lose sight of the big picture as the result of being overly focused on the details. The winning strategy here is to get a glimpse of the entire forest, not to argue about the color of the moss growing on a specific tree. Because I think we do that a lot, right? We argue over the details rather than actually seeing the big picture. I like the way you said that, though. Okay, so preface is done. On to the foreword. Did we have anything on the first page for the foreword? I had the second paragraph. He says, both the structure and the content of your perception of reality are culturally dependent. How a Tibetan Buddhist monk or an American physicist would describe reality is as vastly different as the words, expressions, and metaphors that each would employ to make such a description. And it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning, in that there's so many different ways to speak about truth, and just realizing that we're all saying the same thing. We're just different languages for expressing it.
Well, there's one common goal, is how we see things that gets you to that common goal, right?
And then he goes on to say, we have a tendency to ask, or at least wonder, which description is right and which one is wrong. But then he's like, but asking this, which is right and which is wrong, it represents a narrow and exclusive perspective, which works, which helps its owner to better attain his or her goals, which goals are more productive and lead to growth and progress of the individual, to happiness, satisfaction, usefulness to others. These are somewhat better questions because they focus on practical results and on the measurable effects that each worldview has when applied to individuals, as well as the secondary effects those individuals have on others. So yeah, again, it's not asking what is right, what is wrong. It's asking how useful is this? How helpful is it? Did you guys have anything else from that page?
No.
Okay, the next page over.
I like the first sentence on the first paragraph. How does one define, realize, and measure the satisfaction, personal growth, quality of life, and fulfillment of individual purpose that is derived from each worldview? And I just love that sentence. How, you know, it's up to us who looks at life in our own specific way, and we define life the way we see it.
Yeah. And those are really good questions to have, he's saying. Right? I had the next paragraph highlighted, not sure, but he says the fundamental truth, big picture truth, or simply big truth, though absolute and uniformly significant to everyone, must be discovered by each individual within the context of that individual's experience. No one approach to that discovery is the right one for everybody. Yeah, and again, it's just a reminder that this is what I said to my kids. I tell them, like, you guys, the secret to life, this is the secret to life, okay? Everybody's different. Everybody's different, and just accept that. Don't try to make people the way you are. Just really respect them for who they are.
Or don't try to
become like them.
And don't try to become like them. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. As much as I want to be like your husband, I'm trying. But yeah.
No. Tom has lessons too, you know, guys. He's a guru, but he has lessons to learn. It's really difficult when you're his wife, because it's very difficult for me to decide when something happens, was that my lesson or his lesson?
Yeah.
It's probably at least partly mine, or I wouldn't be wondering, right? Or it wouldn't have even happened.
You know, something that really helped me and has stuck with me is actually Daniel was there not last time, time before, when he was in Vancouver. We were all talking around the dinner table, and he was sharing this experience, I'm sure that you've heard, with Donna and going out of body. And he was sharing that experience, and hearing that experience afterwards, I was like, oh my God, Tom, like, what's the meaning of that? Why did that happen? Obviously, there's something you need to learn from that. And he was like, stuff just happens. And he just kind of brushed it off, and I was like, whoa. Because I always go to my intellect, and I'm like, oh, okay, what's the meaning? What's the meaning? And I try to figure everything out. But what I loved is that he really is just living gracefully with uncertainty and not trying to analyze things to death, and just accepting things as they come up. And seeing him lead by example that way has really left a big impression on me, to not go to my intellect for everything and really just feel my way through life. Such a different way to live life, but to see a physicist do that isn't very, you don't see that very often, because usually they live out of their head, right?
They're very analytical and question everything as to why things are happening.
Being so strongly intellectually controlled, I can't help but question, if you had a world of beings like that, wouldn't it be total chaos?
A world of beings who didn't go to their intellect?
Yeah, they just went with the flow. Whatever happens, happens. And everybody's okay with and maybe not, because everybody would be so okay with it. It's the intellect that's not okay with it, right? Something didn't go the way I planned it. If you didn't have that intellect and they're doing that, maybe everybody would be okay with this real calm, go with the flow. See, it's frustrating for someone like me who's driven to live with people like Tom and Christopher, my son, who is more like Tom than Tom as far as just living in the moment. And, you know, here you are on a schedule, right? We have to be at school at a certain time, and I'm carpooling my 3 children and 2 more, and I get to school, and Christopher says, oh, I forgot my shoes. I got to take him back home and get his shoes. Oh, I forgot my lunch. You know, I mean, he was a huge challenge for me. I love him dearly. He's wonderful, but he was a huge challenge. But fortunately, I had Tom who helped, because Tom said, you do not go back home and get his shoes. You do not go back home and get his lunch. Christopher needs to live with whatever happens.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, for me, who wants to fix everything, that was like, oh, my child doesn't have shoes. He doesn't have a lunch. You know, I'm going to have to fix all these things. So it is interesting. It would be interesting to live in a world where you didn't have the me types trying to control everything, and you just had all these going with the flow. And I guess maybe it would be really nice and not so chaotic. You can tell how far away I am from it by how I see it. It's just total chaos.
Chaos.
Yeah, I think it would work if everybody's if everybody's motive and philosophy was about love and was about other, and we were coming from this place of wanting to help each other and support each other.
Yeah.
Then it would definitely work.
I think I'm going to practice that in my meditations now, visualizing living in a world like that.
I like that. Yeah.
That would be wonderful if this was happening.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
This is fun.
Okay, what do we have on that page? So anything else from that page?
I was 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, 2nd sentence. Big truth like wisdom is not something you can teach or learn from a book. It must be comprehended by individuals within the context of their experience. I feel like that's absolutely true. Something just happened the other day, and I was like, oh, I was seeing something from, it was like a situation that was happening to somebody else, and I had been on both sides of it, both sides of that type of situation. I was like, oh, isn't that interesting that as your life, you know, unfolds, you find yourself in different situations, and you can look at things from different perspectives. And I feel like that's super valuable, how you grow up, basically, because when you're younger, you only see things from basically where you're at, right? And then as you grow and your situation changes, you can see things from a different perspective. And that's so, I don't know, that's something that I think has really helped me grow and maybe be like less judgmental, because I realize that it matters, you know, where you're coming from and where you are in your life as to how you understand things and situations.
Reminds me of that saying. I don't know where it came from. As a matter of fact, I Googled it and couldn't find out, but you always hear, don't judge me unless you've walked a mile in my shoes or my moccasins or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. It's your perspective from where you come from, and the other people have their perspectives from where they come from.
Right.
Really hard to get in their head, though, and really gain their perspective.
And I think that's why you need to see people with innocence, because you have no idea what they're thinking about.
Right. Yeah, don't assume the worst. Assume the best, or assume you don't know.
Assume you don't know and just question, or not question, but ask questions.
Yeah.
To help them share their perceptions or awarenesses to you, so that you can create a picture of what they're feeling or seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some good quotes in here. I'm going to have to read them to Tom. Did you know you wrote this? The best teachers, because I was talking to him yesterday saying that so many people want to reach out and have him as their coach or their counselor. And I said, and I know he wants to help, but I said, you can't. It's not your mission. Your mission is as a teacher to bring this word to large numbers of people. You can't take the time for each individual person that they would like to have. And this is so good. The best teachers can do no more than offer a consistent and coherent understanding of reality that helps their students find the larger perspective required to discover big truth. And that's his goal.
Where is that, Pamela?
On the big book, it's at the bottom of page 28. It's the second sentence in the last paragraph. The best teachers.
Okay.
The bottom of page 30, Daniel.
Okay. Thank you.
All on different books. I had that underlined too. And I think, but the Pamela, isn't that why he set up that constraint, or that if then what? Remember, he has it so that in his consciousness, if somebody needs help, then he does it so that his consciousness will help him.
Yeah.
He says that in the book. Yeah. He's like, so if you're never.
And he can do that in that way. In physical matter reality, he can't be where everybody would want him to be.
Right.
But I think in the consciousness world, I think he can. Like you say, you can ask, and I think you can tap in.
Oh, totally. I feel like I tap into him a lot. What's funny is I took this workshop, a mindfulness workshop a couple weeks ago, and one of the exercises was, okay, now you're going to write a letter to yourself from a trusted friend or mentor or coach, and they're going to tell you words of encouragement or whatever you hear. They're like, so figure out who you want that to be. And I'm like, who do I want it to be? And I'm like, well, obviously Tom, but I'm like, but I already know Tom. I talk to Tom every day in my consciousness. And so I connected to LCS, but yeah, Tom, I think he's definitely got so much love to share. And I like that he's wanting to give people the tools so that they can get there themselves, right? And
right.
You don't want to be codependent on anyone either. And that's
exactly.
Yeah.
He's trying to do that. We're trying to, Keith and Donna are working on trying to expand his reach, because there's a lot of people that want to have access. But I think there's a compromise between access as a teacher versus access as a personal coach.
Mm-hmm.
And he can't, in this physical matter reality, there's just too many people. He can't be their personal coach. But he can do it in a larger consciousness system. Like you said, you can reach out and get help from him or the larger consciousness system or any other energy. There's a lot of help to be had.
There is, yeah. I think it just feels like it's not as ambiguous. It's more kind of concrete. It's like, okay, here's Tom. He's a being. I know him. It's real. I'm connecting with him, right? Whereas when you LCS, it's kind of like, am I really, or am I making it up? I don't know. But
doubt yourself. Yeah, your doubt.
Yeah. But then Tom always says the most important thing, like in all his courses, is you build a strong working relationship with the LCS so that you have that connection, so that you can start to trust it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I'm working on.
And trusting yourself.
Yes. Yeah, because
yes.
The biggest challenge for all of us, I think, at least for me, is trusting myself.
Yes.
Right.
That's where the self-doubt comes.
Yeah.
And when we really look at it, the big picture, we are the LCS. You know what I mean?
We're part of it, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're aspects of it. We're a part of it. So trusting LCS is trusting ourselves. Okay. Anything else from, I guess, the next page over? I had, well, I guess the very top there. If my big toe communicates something of significance to you by resonating with your unique knowing, then this particular expression of the nature of reality suits your being. If it leaves you untouched, perhaps some other view of reality will speak to you more effectively. And then the form your understanding takes is not significant. It is the results that count. So again, I really like that, because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Everybody has their own path, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys have anything else on that page?
Well, I guess we should bring out, because he made it in bold and said, please repeat it twice. Do not confuse the model of reality with reality itself. This is one of the things he always says.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you think that really means in the context of the book?
I think it means, again, we have to get in touch with who we are and trust ourselves and the larger consciousness system. If we get stuck in the model, it could become dogma, like a lot of religions. You know, all of a sudden there are rules that we live by rather than really being the goal here is to be and to live by being and experiencing.
Right. Yeah.
And he always uses the examples where, you know, Bob Monroe walks you through and he has his nice park or whatever. Well, it's a metaphor. It's not really there, it's a metaphor. So it's the same thing with the model. If you become thinking that whatever the words are is it instead of the being, I think it's a problem.
So you don't get too obsessed with the analytical part of it. Just let it.
That's right.
Just feel
Just
it.
let it go. It doesn't matter anyway. It's just a model.
Mm-hmm.
Just a model. Just a metaphor. They're just metaphors.
Yes.
Yeah. And you're right, that whole dogma piece, because we can go there, and if we're explaining the model to somebody, saying, you know, this reality is just a virtual reality. You don't have to take this so seriously. And then maybe they're coming from a place like, no, it's not. Like this place sucks, and after this, then we go to heaven. And then you start arguing over the models. You're moving away from your actual purpose here, right?
Right. You can just let that be and say, okay, that's their metaphor, and don't try to convince them of yours.
Right.
And if that works for them and they're growing spiritually and becoming a better person, hey, it's okay.
Good for them, yeah.
Yeah.
Right or wrong, everybody interprets reality differently.
Your perception and their perception may be the same thing. You're just expressing it differently, right?
Yes, different words, different metaphors.
Yeah, different things work for different strokes for different folks.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? Well, I guess the next page over.
Well, he does say, just like what we just said, this model of reality is not the only valid metaphor or description of the nature of larger reality.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I didn't have anything else highlighted for the next couple pages. Did you guys have anything?
No.
Nothing. It's funny how we're highlighting the same thing and we're not highlighting the same things. This happened last time too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to match it up from my Kindle. The next thing I had, it was, it is your potential personal interaction with this material that has initiated as well as driven its development. So I feel like what he's saying there is the whole purpose or his intent for creating this was because it had potential for us to grow and evolve into our full potential.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure what page that was on because it's in my Kindle. Oh, here we go. Page 33. It's for me and Pam.
Okay.
Probably 35 for us.
35 for you?
Christine, I think so.
Where are you, Daniel?
No, I think with the big book and our book, it's about 2 pages separation.
Okay.
So yeah, do you see the paragraph? It's the second to last on, I guess, page 35 for you guys. He says, you will find an open, logical, and skeptical mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So he's saying, yeah, to have an open, logical, and skeptical mind with a broad depth of experience is much more helpful than a technical background. I really like that because I'm not technical.
Oh,
I'll be right back.
Okay.
I did have something, the previous page where he's talking, it starts with Albert Einstein's space-time field, unified field theory.
Okay.
So what I had underlined is the role of consciousness instead of space-time is the primary energy field. And then next paragraph, digital physics has not yet discovered that consciousness is the computer.
Yeah.
Guys, my daughter and one of my grandsons just arrived, and you know, that's important to me. So I'm going to have to cut it short for today. And next week, Tom will be in November doing the immersive. Or it'll be November, we're doing an immersive. We'll be in Tennessee again, Vanessa. But you know what? I'm going to at least dial in and listen. And I'll have the book and I will listen. So I won't be speaking, but I am listening because I think this is great and I'm having so much fun. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Pamela, for coming.
Yeah, that part with consciousness is the computer.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I feel like I still don't really understand that what does that mean?
Consciousness is the computer?
So
Yeah.
when I hear that, it's that we as conscious beings are the one that are creating this reality. It's nothing outside of ourselves. It's us we've created this for our growth. We as consciousness. Yeah. Because if you look at these other virtual reality models like Elon Musk has, it's always something outside of us, like some other entities that are more evolved, and they're playing with us in this virtual reality that they've created.
Yeah.
But it's actually we've created it for our growth and evolution. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I feel like I need to, like, maybe last time I had so much issue with the ego, and this time maybe it's really trying to understand exactly what consciousness is, right? If it's like just awareness, right? What does consciousness mean, really? You know?
Yeah.
I think it's a big idea, you know?
Yeah, it is. And a lot of people ask that, like, what is consciousness? And awareness is, what I've heard Tom say, awareness, consciousness. Well, that's where it starts, right?
Awareness.
Yeah, is like a dim awareness. And then it evolves and it grows from there. It becomes more, it can do more as it grows. It's not just an awareness now. Now it can actually function. And it does that by
learning and growing,
and then breaking itself into pieces so that it can interact with itself, and that through that interaction with itself it can do more. It has more potential. When it's just this dim awareness, it has very limited potential, but then it grows. And like he was saying, like, this American English language that we have doesn't really do much justice to understanding or explaining the true nature of reality. We're a subset of the true nature of reality. So for us to try to talk about it is kind of futile.
Right. But it's like, so is consciousness one of these words where it applies both on, say, the macro level and the micro level, right? Where awareness on an individual level is sort of like what I was talking about, where you're aware of your behavior, right? And because you're aware of it, you are able to, you're like more observant, and you can make changes to it, right?
Yeah, you definitely have to be aware, and that's step one, right? And then, Tom also talks about something that is conscious is something that has the ability to make choices. You have to have the ability to make choices in order to be a conscious being. That's why he says, like, a rock, not really conscious. That ability to make choices. Because when we have that ability to make choices, that's how we grow. That's how we move forward.
Right. Okay.
Okay. What page are we on here? Did you guys have anything else from that page?
No.
No.
So yeah, over to 33. So you guys are 2 pages ahead, so 35 for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just continuing where he says, like, you don't need to have a technical background. He says, the details of little picture reality are by nature highly technical and the exclusive territory of modern science and mathematics. But on the other hand, big picture reality is available and accessible to anyone with an open mind and the will to apply it. There are no requirements for formal education or technical credentials in order to understand what is presented here. And I really like that because he's basically saying this information, big picture reality, is available to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be like selected. It's anyone who has an open mind can access it.
Right. I think it's the fear that holds us back from experiencing this as well, right?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's so outside of our comfort zone.
Yes.
Okay, anything from 36? The third paragraph, just kind of like, I guess it's 3 sentences in. He says, as it turns out, the nature of reality has both an objective and a subjective component. And then a little bit further down there, the last sentence, he says, to appreciate and deeply understand the personal or subjective nature of consciousness, you must grow your own toe. One of the major goals of My Big Toe is to provide the logical conceptual framework, materials, tools, and direction that you need to independently grow your big toe.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking of fractals right there, where he's sort of given us almost like the he's just a catalyst for us, and from there we take it, what he's given us, and create our own perceptions, our own awareness of what's going around, and create our own. I wouldn't say using the word belief isn't right, but I think our own
Understanding
of the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the next paragraph, second sentence, he says, your personal big understanding of big truth must flow primarily from your direct experience, not from your intellect alone.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's why meditation is so helpful, because you can really have that direct experience. Level, that feeling.
I've noticed that, like, I'm meditating every day for about 30 minutes, like 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening. I've noticed that I don't really need much sleep anymore. It's like maybe 3-4 hours of sleep and I'm good. It's really strange.
Yeah, cool. I guess the next paragraph down in the middle there, he says, this reality model cannot serve as your personal big toe until it is based upon your personal experience. Just really reinforcing how important it is to have it as your experience, not anyone else's.
Right.
Personal big toe. 37, you guys have anything from page 37?
Yeah, it's actually just more repetition of what we've been talking about. It's the second paragraph.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A personal big toe is necessary because the larger reality, like your consciousness, has a subjective component as well as collective objective component. The larger reality cannot be fully appreciated or understood merely by studying or reading about it. You must experience it.
Yeah. And it's funny because, and that's what we're doing. We're studying and we're reading about it.
Right.
But this is also in complement to this is complementary to our living day to day and our experiences that we have. Because it, like we were talking about earlier with Pam, is it's so easy to go on autopilot and like just speed through life. But then slow us down and remember the big picture, and then go about our daily life. Have this experience.
Right. Well, I don't think that he's sort of negating the value of reading about something, right?
No.
Like I kind of think about how, like in our careers, right, in our jobs, you take classes, you go to school, right? But and even though like reading a book about what you're doing may be helpful, what really, I guess, fosters wisdom is your experience, because you see how that stuff is applied. Those concepts are actually applied.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Anything else? I had the next paragraph after that. Change in the middle there. Second sentence. Change and new ways of thinking are often traumatic, difficult to integrate, and generally unwelcome. Resistance to change is automatic at the gut level. We cling to familiar ways for the security and comfort they provide. We do not easily see unfamiliar patterns. You must be willing to overcome fear and rise above self-imposed belief blindness if you are to succeed in getting a good look at the big picture.
Yeah, I had that highlighted as well.
Yeah. Isn't it so funny? And like how he says there, we do not easily see unfamiliar patterns. And I'm just noticing even in my own life, like even to recognize patterns that I have, that I do, or conditions, how I habitually go about my life, it's hard for me to even see that. Unless, like Cam was saying, you have a coach, or for me, I have a friend who can kind of hold up the mirror and show me some of these patterns that I'm continuously repeating. But
because you're not aware of them, right?
Yeah, until you're aware of it. Yeah. I have the next paragraph too. In the pages ahead, we're going to explore the reality wilderness. This trilogy is about the how, what, and why of what is. It is about physics and metaphysics, your world and other worlds. It is about beginnings, endings, mind and matter, point and purpose. It is also about the quality of your personal consciousness. To me, that's like so cool. Those are all the things that I'm really interested in, and I'm really interested in my whole life. And this book explores all of those things. I mean, it's easy to find a book that will have like a piece of this and a piece of that, but to have a book that goes into all of it, it's really exciting for me.
And I think that's why I'm drawn to Tom, is because he puts everything together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. And the other thing too is that even though it's complicated, you can really sum it up in a very simple sentence or two. That, our experience here is about growing and moving towards love, and I think that even though this is super complicated, ultimately it's a metaphor for something very simple.
Yeah.
Right?
We're here to make choices. Choices. Yeah, I did have the next one underlined too. Did you guys have it? You want to read it, one of you guys?
Your intellectual understanding. Your intellectual understanding of the reality you exist within and are part of is only the beginning, a place to start. The most important action, the real fun, begins after you have finished the trilogy and begin to apply what you have learned about reality and the big picture to the rest of your life.
Yeah. Both professionally and personally.
And
then, did you have the last one highlighted?
Yes, always.
Yeah, Daniel, you want to read it?
The last sentence?
Yeah.
The last paragraph.
Though you will Though you will soon learn there is more to reality than theory and facts, here is one fact that you should consider before you begin. Big truth once understood and assimilated always modifies your intent and invariably leads to personal change.
Yeah.
I love that one.
I love that because that gives me the motivation to go on with this.
Exactly.
It is, it's big truth. And that's what we're doing is we're learning about it. We're learning and we're moving slowly through the material together so we can assimilate it. Right?
Yeah. And I wrote down truth seeker right there.
Yeah. Woo, truth seeker. Here's another truth seeker. My little baby.
Hey.
Hey there.
Yeah. Well, this was great. You guys want to wrap up with the closing circle?
Sure.
Final thoughts and insights?
Yeah, do we know what we're doing for next week, or you want to do that after?
Yeah, we can do that. How many pages do you guys want to read?
I know that I'm not going to be able to be there next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
My gut says that we should do it slowly, so we can absorb it and talk about it. You know.
Although this isn't this book much easier than some of the others? Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to do the first 4 chapters, which I think is they're short chapters.
They are.
That'll be about 22 pages. But
Okay.
Is that all?
Yeah, it's just a story. So.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll stop at chapter 5.
Okay.
Okay. 1, 2.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So let's,
16 pages. Okay.
Final thoughts, comments?
Really loved it. I'm so glad that we're doing it again. I'm so grateful that Pamela joined us.
Wow.
That's great. It's good to see and hear her perspective, how she is so close to Tom, and there's so much good things to hear from her. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
All right, guys, it's great to reconnect. It's so funny. What's it been, about 6 months, and it feels like, hasn't skipped a beat at all. So I'm really looking forward to revisiting. And I feel like when this stopped, what I found so helpful about it last time is that you, because you have to kind of be committed to it and continue to do the reading, you have this, bigger, for me at least, you're more reflective, and you're practicing the material very consistently, or at least you're exposed to it repeatedly and in small digestible chunks that I feel like it helps you navigate life. So I'm really looking forward to doing that again.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I love this. This was great. So it's so great to connect with you guys again. This was a lot of fun, and I'm super stoked to go through this again. I'm ready. Like, it's a big commitment because it's about a year, right? It's a year-long.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. I'm super happy to do this. I'm really appreciative. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Woo-hoo. All right, we'll see you next Saturday.
Next Saturday. Okay.
Sure.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.